Hi, my name is Sunil Grover, Principal Solutions Architect with SAS, and I'll be sharing a demonstration using Visual Analytics for forecasting, scenario analysis, and optimization based on clickstream data with respect to how we optimize towards digital media mix. With that, let's get into it. So let's start with a demonstration with Visual Analytics, an example that addresses forecasting for web traffic. Now what we're looking at is simply a summarization of the last 2 months of traffic at SAS.com. Now, the first question of interest is, how do we predict what future traffic will look like in the next 2 weeks? To produce that analysis, all I have to do is check this box for forecasting, and Visual Analytics will produce, in this case, a 2-week prediction of what traffic's going to look like. Now I can scroll over any particular date and see what the most likely amount of traffic will be, as well as what the best and worst case scenario will be for that date. But this is a really simple look at what future traffic is going to look like over the next 2 weeks. A very common attribute that marketers like to look at is, where did the visitors come from before they arrived at our site? In other words, what were the traffic sources, and do they have varying levels of importance in predicting future traffic? And to do that, I can just come over here to my data pane and select the attributes that will identify which channel the visitor came from. Was it a blog? Was it a display ad? Was it social media? Was it paid search? There are many different points of origination where a digital visitor might come from. So I'm going to select these attributes, and I'm going to add them into the analysis. I simply select them, drag them into the drop zone, and add them in as underlying factors. So what this is going to do is going to assess which of those traffic channels are important with respect to the prediction. So what Visual Analytics does now is produces 3 separate visualizations stacked on top of one another. The top visualization represents our overall web traffic and the predicted 2-week traffic going forward. The middle and the lower visualization represent the 2 channels that were identified as significant by the software. It looked at all 7 traffic channels and identified that paid search and organic search, the attributes in black font, were important with respect to this prediction. That's beautiful, because now it's prioritizing for me which channels I should be paying attention to. So what do we do with this information? The interesting question we might ask is, well, if we were going to spend advertising dollars on recruiting more traffic in this 2-week time period, where will we put those advertising dollars? Of these 2 channels that were identified as important, only paid search is an ad-centric channel. So what if we could run some scenarios or some simulations with increased levels of ad investment to see what impact that would have in the paid search channel and overall visitation to the site? To do that, I just click the scenario analysis button. And the hypothetical question is, what if I increased my ad spend in paid search by, say, 50%? How might that impact overall site visitation? Well, it's a really easy question to not only answer, but also to perform the analysis. I'm going to click on the forecast of paid search traffic, which is represented in the middle visualization, and I'm going to set that inflated metric to represent that actual scenario. So I'm going to adjust the series value by the 50% that marketing leader asked me to perform. You'll notice that the paid search traffic now has that 50% lift baked in. And now I'm going to hit apply to run the scenario analysis and see how that impacts the top visualization, which represents overall site traffic. And now we can see, hey, by date, not only what the original baseline count was for visits to the site, which in this case was 1166, but also with paid search being bumped up by a 50% ad investment, we can see the incremental lift that'll drive to overall site visits. Now we're just looking at that by date. We can also look at it in a table view and see across all the predicted time or all the predicted visitor dates what paid search values need to be hit to get to those levels of overall site visits as displayed by the prior visualization. Let's go back. So some of you might be thinking, well, we could run an endless number of scenarios. Maybe the business leader says we want to run it at 25%, at 20%, at 30%, at 35%. The number of scenarios and the way to manually tinker with the levers goes on and on. How do you know when you're not leaving opportunity on the table? This asks a different type of question. What is the overall business objective, and how do we optimize that? Well, we can address that sort of problem in Visual Analytics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my analysis. Once we get back to our original starting point, the only difference is I have to ask a different question, which is, what is the overall business objective? It is to increase website visitation, but by how much? Let's say the business leader says, I want to double website traffic in the 2-week forecast. Sure, no problem. I just come to the upper visualization that represents overall site visitation, and I do the exact same thing I did before. I'm going to adjust that percentage and double it. You'll see the lift now for overall site visits. I'm now going to run or apply that adjustment. And what Visual Analytics is going to do is going to look at all the underlying factors, in this case, paid search and organic search, and it's going to optimize the values by date to meet that business objective. Absolutely beautiful. Now, here's the great thing about visualization. My business leader sees that there's a huge spike on May 7th for paid search. My business leader says, I'm not willing to hedge my bets or hedge my risk and spend that much money on advertising for that particular date. Okay, well then, Mr. and Mrs. Business Leader, what are your bounds? Or how high are you willing to go? And so in Visual Analytics, I can actually insert those preferences. So the business leader says, well, for paid search, I'm willing to spend as little as nothing, but I'm not willing to go that high, and that business leader gives me a new value to set as my roof. I insert those bounds. Those bounds are updated in the visualization with those horizontal dotted lines. And now we rerun. And now the optimization routine will take those constraints into consideration and re-optimize the values to meet the business objective of doubling website traffic. Now, for those of you watching this video that know a thing or two about digital marketing, you might notice there's a spike now here for organic search that deviates from the original distribution, represented by the gray line. That's a little bit of a problem because organic search is not an ad-centric channel. So can we adjust for that? We actually can. And we can actually just physically grab that value for that particular date and bring it down to a level that we're more comfortable with. Once we're done manually adjusting that date and bringing it closer to a value that we feel is more practical, we rerun the optimization again with that new constraint. And voila, we've now optimized to the business objective with all the business rule constraints that we felt necessary to insert into the analysis. Based on the updated analysis, all the updated values are available for us in a table view. This is really important now because I can now pass this to my peer in the marketing department that manages paid search campaigns. They understand the cost per click that they're managing towards, and now they see the amount of traffic they're also targeting by date to reach the overall business objective. For those of you that care, Visual Analytics also discloses the math behind the scenes. With that said, the only other item one might want to do is, how do I get this information out of Visual Analytics to a team member that works, say, in Excel? Well, I can actually open up a table down below that summarizes all of my KPIs across this analysis by date. Now what we're looking at are those values for the historical dates, but as I scroll down, you'll notice everything I did with my forecasting and my scenario analysis and my optimization is now highlighted in the gray rows. This may be the information that my peer needs to push into a tool like Excel. So all I have to do is right-click, select Export Data, and I can save this in a CSV file. And that's a perfectly acceptable format for someone who works in a different type of software tool. So that's the demonstration using Visual Analytics, showcasing forecasting, scenario analysis, and optimization, and addressing the very common digital marketer challenges with respect to media mix allocation and attribution analysis. We greatly appreciate you checking out the video. We hope you enjoyed it.